What is up, guys, and welcome to another patch rundown video. My name is Christoph, and today we're going to be talking about all the changes in patch 10.6. Are mid laners and bot laners going to keep running it down? Is Teemo actually going to be a jungler now? What is happening with the new teleport? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? And as always, with all the different changes, we're going to be putting all the champions into a tier list, placing your favorite champions, seeing if they are S, A, B, or C. Maybe even D. Who knows? And for our question of the day, what champion does not belong in the jungle? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Teemo does not belong in the jungle. I know that a lot of players are pretty good with Teemo, and it can actually work in higher elo sometimes if you're a very skilled Teemo player, but I have a feeling that a lot of people are just going to feed as Teemo jungler. I don't want that in my game, so let me know who you think does not belong in the jungle. And as always, guys, if you want to get better at League of Legends, make sure to go to ProGuides.com, click that description link below, find your challenger coach right now, and start climbing the ranks. And before we get into the video, if you guys are on your phones all the time like I am, then make sure to follow our Instagram channels on the screen right here. We post a ton of YouTube content on Instagram. All right, guys, with all that out of the way, let's get into the video. First up, let's talk about my favorite part, the skins. First up, we've got Cosmic Lux as well as Dark Cosmic Lux hitting Summoner's Rift this patch. We also have Dark Star Malphite hitting the Rift as well as Prestige version of it. Afterwards, there's Dark Star Mordekaiser and Dark Star Xerath. Finally, we've got a new set of skins including Talon Blackfoot, Twitch Shadowfoot, and Taric Lumen Shield. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get you guys those patch notes. Starting off with the items, there's not much here, but we still have to note the one change we're seeing, and that's going to be to Death's Dance. Death's Dance is receiving a rework, changing its stat allocations completely. Its attack damage is being reduced from 80 to 50, but will now grant 30 armor as well as 30 magic resist. They've also adjusted the bleed effect. Ranged champions will only receive 20% of the damage they take as a bleed effect instead of the normal 30%. If this confuses you guys, this is a nerf for ranged champions. You take 80% damage flat and 20% as a bleed, while melee champions take 70% flat and 30% as a bleed. Finally, its cost is being increased from 3,500 to 3,600. This item will be likely a Bruiser exclusive purchase because of these changes, but only time will tell. It still looks usable by champions like Graves. Aside from this change, we're also seeing some changes to other systems in the game. Teleport is receiving a massive change this patch. Its cooldown will now scale from 420 seconds to 240 seconds based on champion level. It's kind of like they just flipped the 2 and the 4. I don't know if that's lazy or interesting or there's no correlation whatsoever. Also, you'll gain 30 to 50% movement speed once you finish the channel. As a result of this, it'll be a much weaker summoner spell in the early game, but much stronger in the late game. The goal is to ultimately push other roles away from taking the summoner spell and also allow top laners to have more impact when they do choose to cast it. Overall, this should make each teleport count a lot more, but also allow players to punish their opponents much harder when they do expend early teleports. Finally, funneling has taken another nerf this patch. The Monster Hunter penalty will now also reduce minion XP by 50%. Goodbye, Master Yi and Taric. Well, at least we can hope. Alright, now let's hit those champion balance changes. First up, let's talk about Garen. He's been a little bit too strong, let's be honest, and had a bit too much of the spotlight. Gosh, Garen, you diva. Garen is receiving a nerf to both his tankiness and damage output. His magic resist scaling is going down as well from 1.25 per level to 0.75 per level. His ease critical hit scaling is also receiving a nerf, going from 50% to 33%. These nerfs target crit builds specifically, and AP champions should have less trouble killing Garen in the late game. However, it's not that big of a deal as it totals to about 9 MR. However, he gains MR from his W anyway, so it's more like the playing field is being evened out for magic damage champions. Garen will drop to the S tier as a result for this patch because of the hit to his crit damage. A big part of why Garen has been so oppressive is the insane damage he can deal with his spin, and since that's been hit, he'll be a little bit weaker. Speaking of our S+ tier picks, we have to talk about Darius as well. Oy, this guy has been destroying me constantly in lane. Darius's W's bonus damage is being reduced from 50 to 70% total AD to 40 to 60% total AD. His W's mana cost is going up from 30 to 40, and his E's mana cost is going up from 45 to 60. For one thing, these mana cost nerfs are actually pretty big. I have never seen a Darius run out of mana because his mana costs were practically non-existent. This should punish Darius players pretty hard for missing their pull or missing a last hit with their W, which I think is pretty fair, to be honest. These nerfs are going to take a hit to Darius's damage output and also weaken his ability to push waves a little bit as well. In spite of this, we're going to be keeping Darius in our S+ tier because these nerfs aren't too significant. His damage isn't going down too much, but we'll make sure to keep you guys in the loop during our mid-patch update next week. As Zyrene mentioned in our upcoming changes video, Nasus has some changes coming, but they've been pushed to patch 10.7 instead. We'll make sure to keep you guys updated on those changes ASAP though, so hit that sub button if you want to stay notified. While he was an extremely dominant pick last patch, we haven't been seeing much of Urgot recently. Urgot's Q's slow duration is going up by a quarter second from 1 to 1.25 seconds. His E's stun duration is receiving the same buff, increasing from 0.75 seconds to 1 second. He hasn't been doing too bad, so these buffs should help Urgot hit a decent win rate. We're moving him up from the C tier to a B tier as a result of these changes. Overall, we see a few shifts in the top lane. Like we mentioned before, Garen has moved down to the S tier with Fiora replacing him, while Urgot and Hecarim have moved up a tier since our last patch rundown. Hecarim did receive a minor buff this patch, but we'll cover that in our jungle section coming up next. Ornn has also gone down a tier because he hasn't really been performing well last patch. He's still a very safe pick, but his win rate dropped significantly since his glory days of 2 patches ago. In our S+ tier, we have Darius, who holds so much power right now. A big question players have to ask when they lock in a champion is whether they can beat Darius or if he's banned. A snowballing Darius is a huge concern for many players, and this ranking reflects it. Fiora has been popping off on Summoner's Rift as well, and in spite of being more of a counter-pick champion, she held a 51% win rate last patch as well as an insanely high play rate. Definitely a bit overtuned at the moment, so make sure to abuse her while you still can. Following in the S tier, we have Garen, Mordekaiser, Shen, Kled, and Set. We expect a lot of changes as a result of the teleport changes hitting the Rift this patch, so we'll probably have some big shifts in our mid-patch update. There are a ton of jungle changes that hit the live server as well, so let's jump right into it. Alright, first thing is first, we have to talk about all the new champions entering into the jungle pool. Although they've remained unranked for now since we lack information, we'll make sure to give you guys our analysts' general thoughts on them though. Okay, let's talk about Brand. Why are they putting a pyromaniac in the jungle? Well, my guess is as good as yours. Brand will be joining the jungle pool this patch. His passive damage will now deal 120% damage to monsters. Brand should have absolutely no issue clearing the Raptor, Wolf, and Krug camps, while his passive should deal plenty of damage to those beefier solo camps as well. Brand's placement though, well, it will depend heavily on how well he can do when pitted against the high kill pressure champions rampant in the jungle right now. We expect Brand to be placed in the B or A tier, however, as he definitely clears the jungle pretty well and deals tons of damage, as you guys know. Okay, so now on to the next one, Zyra. It kind of actually makes sense for Zyra to be placed in the jungle since she's, well, a plant. Her plants now deal 150% damage to monsters. This is a big buff, and we'll definitely keep tabs on her and just see how she does, but analysts predict she'll probably sit around the C or B tier. Next up is Morgana. Morgana is receiving general buffs as well as jungle buffs. We'll mention them all here, so don't fret if we don't mention them in our support changes. First, Morgana's movement speed is going up from 330 to 335, and her E shield increased by 20 in the early game from 60 to 80. On top of this, she now deals 150% damage to jungle monsters with her W. A big reason why I think this change might be the most impactful is that opening up jungle Morgana allows you to have more bot lane diversity. Sure, you might need Morgana's black shield to block a Blitzcrank hook later into the game, but maybe your support still prefers playing poke champions like Nami or hard engagers like Leona. You can take Morgana into the jungle instead, still providing that anti-fun shield we all love to have, but hate to play against. She'll likely be an A tier pick, but we'll keep you guys updated on that. Now we have another jungler, who goes by the name of Shen. Shen is finally joining Rift Scuttler in the jungle. His Q's max damage to monsters is receiving a giant buff, going up to 125 to 200 from 75 to 175. For Shen and the other two picks, our analysts really aren't sure where they'll be placed. We'll have to wait and see. Okay guys, we actually alluded to this before, but let's be sensible about this. Let's be nice since he's a new addition, we don't want him to feel too bad, but Teemo is joining the lineup. Teemo's blind duration is going to be doubled against jungle monsters, and his E will now deal 150% damage to monsters. At the very least, he'll counter basic attack reliant champions like Master Yi. That is pretty nice actually, because I am constantly getting dumpstered by unchecked Yis. So if I have a Teemo on my team and the enemy jungler is a Master Yi, I'll actually be pretty happy, I won't rage. Another jungler coming up is going to be my man Yorick. Yorick is next on the list. He'll now spawn Graves on jungle monsters that die as well, while his ghouls will take 50% damage from jungle monsters. I'm honestly not sure how I feel about Yorick being in the jungle. I think he could actually do some pretty powerful work with ganks. His E is a great slow when you land it, does a lot of damage, and when you put that W down, man, that's pretty much an insta-kill. So he could be pretty good actually. I think I might play him. Okay, aside from those new junglers, we also have some buffs coming to some old ones, like Kayn. Kayn received a buff to his passive, increasing the amount of orbs he collects. He'll transform faster, which is nice, but he'll still remain in our A tier. Okay, next up is Hecarim. Hecarim's fear duration on his ultimate has increased from 0.75 to 1.5 seconds to 0.75 to 2 seconds based on distance traveled. This should reward well-aimed ultimates and encourage more aggressive play. 2 seconds for an AoE fear is a really long one, so expect to see him to run over more of his competition. He'll still remain in the B tier for now, but we'll let you know if this change affected much next patch. Kindred is also up for some buffs. Kindred's AD per level went from 2.26 to 2.5, while her W's missing health restore is increasing from 32 to 100 to 45 to 100, and her R's heal is going up from 200 to 300 to 200 to 400. It's more of a readability buff than anything. But her numbers are still going up at the end of the day, so that is good for Kindred. She'll move up to the A tier as a result of these changes. So I think that a lot of people are going to be happy to hear this next one. To the dismay of Shaco players everywhere, however, his clone's attack damage went down from 75% to 60% of his total AD. This might incentivize more players to play AP Shaco, but overall this nerf isn't too big and he'll remain in the S tier. Wukong's mini rework has been shipped out. It's a lot of stuff, so I'm just gonna jump right in. Wukong's base health has been lowered from 577.8 to 540. His base mana increased from 265 to 300, mana per level from 38 to 45, mana regen per 5 rounded down to 8, and base MR lowered from 32.1 to 28. His passive now provides 5 to 11 armor based on level, no longer grants magic resist, but also grants 0.5% of your maximum health as health regen per 5. If Wukong or one of his clones hits an enemy champion or large monster, these bonuses increase by 62.5% for 5 seconds. His Q will now grant 30 to 130 plus 50% of his base AD as bonus damage, and its bonus range has changed from 125 flat to 75 to 175 based on spell level. Whew, this is a lot to take in, guys. Okay, stay with me. The cooldown has gone up from 9 to 5 to 9 to 7, but you can now reduce the cooldown by 0.5 seconds every time Wukong or one of his clones deals damage. Wukong's W will still leave a clone behind, but it'll now mimic his actions. It'll attempt to attack units Wukong has attacked, Q will grant it bonus damage, E will grant it bonus attack speed, and his ultimate will also cause his clone to spin, knocking up champions it hits that Wukong hasn't already knocked up. The cooldown is going up from 18 to 10 to 20 to 16. The clone will deal 50 to 70% damage based on spell level. Also, a turret shot will instantly kill a clone. Wukong's E now deals magic damage, has had its attack speed bonus increased by 10%, buff duration increased to 5 seconds, cooldown changed from 8 seconds to 10 to 8 based on level, and mana cost reduced by 15. Wukong's ultimate? Well, it's received a huge buff. He can cast it a second time within 8 seconds, and this second cast can knock up enemies once again. The knockup duration has thus been decreased from 1 to 0.75 seconds, and the spin duration decreased from 4 to 2 seconds. On top of this, the damage on it has changed to 4 to 8% of Wukong's maximum health, plus 1.1 total attack damage. It'll tick every 0.25 seconds instead of every 0.5 seconds for the sake of applying Conqueror stacks more quickly. He'll retain bonus attack speed from his E while spinning, and can also cancel the ultimate by using another ability now. As a general rule of thumb, we're going to hold off on placing any newly reworked champions, but make sure to subscribe so you can stay tuned to figure out where we place him in the mid-patch update. Okay, let's get into the list already, gosh. In our S+ tier, we have Elise, Warwick, and Zac. These champions are the best gankers at the moment. They're reliable and can safely dive in basically any situation, as they have the tools to specifically make turret diving easier to pull off. Honestly, they're not that much stronger than our S-tier champions like Lee Sin, Olaf, Rek'Sai, Karthus, Shaco, Trundle, Nunu, and Echo. All of these guys have their respective strengths and have a solid set of statistics to back them up. With the funneling nerfs this patch, we've decided to move Master Yi to the A tier. Alright guys, that's it for our junglers, so let's hop into the mid lane next. We aren't seeing too many shifts this patch in the mid lane either. But let's talk about Bird. Bird is the word first. Yes, it's none other than Anivia. Anivia received a buff. Her R's chill duration increased from 2 to 3 seconds. This should make it a lot easier for her to activate the bonus damage from her E. She's been seeing a lot of success recently, so while she'll remain in the B tier for now, our analysts do think that she might make the move up to A tier, so hit that sub button if you want to stay notified. Next up is Xerath. Xerath's W's sweet spot is having its damage amplification increase from 50% to 66.7%. His ultimate's damage is also receiving a buff, increasing from 200 to 280 plus 43% AP to 200 to 300 plus 45% AP. While these buffs are great, Xerath is struggling to survive altogether during games in the current meta, so he'll probably still remain in the B tier. The most evil boss on Summoner's Rift is excited for a buff. Veigar is having his Q damage buffed from 70 to 230 to 80 to 240. Also, his base attack damage has gone up from 50.71 to 52. His attack damage growth has also gone up from 2.625 to 2.7, and his base armor has gone up from 22.55 to 23. These are really quite small changes. We don't expect to see any changes in his win rate as a result. Twisted Fate finally received the buffs he was due. His blue card's AP ratio is going up to 0.9 from 0.5, while his red card is going up to 0.6. This should incentivize more players to pick cards that aren't gold later into the game. His wave clear is going up, and he can now potentially one-shot opponents with a blue card. Rise buffs? Anyone? Uh-oh. Rise's mana regen per level has increased from 0.8 to 1 per level. Okay. But seriously, this is an okay buff because Rise suffers an unhappy life until he finishes his tier. While this mana regen buff is rather small in the early game, it's still something. His W's magic damage also went from 80 to 160 to 80 to 200. Rise doesn't usually level his W early, so this will instead help out Rise in the late game slightly, while the mana regen buffs give him some extra mana to work with in the early game. These aren't really significant buffs, so he'll just remain in the B tier for now. In our S+ tier, we still have Fizz, and we have Diana, because of how much damage they deal, also because of how difficult they are to kill. Following them in the S tier, we have Kassadin, Katarina, Echo, Cass, Vladimir, Talon, Zed, Yasuo, and Qiyana. All these champions deal so much damage and are the types you'd see in highlight reels. None of these balance changes were enough to cause any movement, but Morgana has moved up to the C tier. Those jungle buffs should allow her to clear raptor camps in between waves, and she also has more power in the draft because of her triple flex potential. While Twisted Fate is still sitting in the A tier, these buffs could put him very close to contending for the S tier spot. Alright guys, that's enough with the mid lane, let's talk about the bot lane. It's Draven time, maybe. First up, Draven is getting some more love. His W's movement speed went up from 40 to 60 to 50 to 70%. Although his damage hasn't increased, he should have an easier time chasing, kiting, and staying in range as a result of these buffs. This will inevitably increase Draven's damage output during the early game because it'll be a lot harder to run away from him. However, he's still going to stay in the A tier for now because of how volatile he is. Riot has decided to nerf Senna once again. Her passive AD per soul has decreased from 1 to 0.75. The weakened soul portion of her passive is having its cooldown increased from 4 to 6. 5 and 4 seconds based on level, going down at levels 6 and 11. This will slow down Senna's scaling because she won't be able to activate her passive as often, meaning that it'll take a little longer before she gets that bonus range she's constantly fishing for. Of course, her late game damage scaling is also taking a hit. As a result, we're bumping her down to the S tier. Aphelios also took some hits this patch. Severum is having its lifesteal decrease from 8 to 25% to 3 to 20%. Infernum's minion damage went from 45% to 30%, and his mini chakram damage is dropping from 30 to 173% of his total AD to 24 to 164% of it. These nerfs should take some power away from Aphelios' versatile kit, namely it'll hit his wave clear sustain and team fighting power. While he's still capable of so many different things, he's going to be a little bit weaker overall, so we're going to be dropping him into the A tier. I'm sorry, Nathan, I know you love Aphelios. There have been very few changes this patch, however, now S and S Plus tier are relatively the same. In the S Plus tier, we have Misfortune because of her insane lane dominance. She's easily the strongest marksman right now because of how heavily she can dictate lanes. She's also really easy to pick up, so if you're in lower elo, definitely consider her. In the S tier, we have Senna, Ezreal, Vayne, Lucian, Caitlyn, and Jinx. Ezreal is a heavy contender for the S Plus tier. He's been doing a lot better as players have figured out what makes him work this current season. As always, he's still the same 1v9 champion he's always been because of his insane mobility and range on his Q. If he can chunk out his opponents before a big fight, then those fights are already over, and he's one of the most difficult champions to dive and successfully kill. Finally, let's wrap it up with supports. We already covered Morgana and Senna, so the only support change left to cover is Soraka's. Her Q's total heal has increased from 40 to 80 to 50 to 90. Also, her Q movement speed is going up by 5% to 15 to 25%. Riot is choosing to act conservatively with these buffs to Soraka as they don't want to accidentally push her back into the top lane and make us all rage. I'm okay with that personally because I don't think any of us were having fun up there. This won't push her up a tier, however, so she'll remain in the A tier. Okay, we're going to mention that the Senna-Tahm Kench duo is easily one of the strongest ones in the game right now. Even after these Senna nerfs, this duo will still dominate the bottom lane. Have you guys seen this yet? If you have, please show some respect to the people who lost to this lane in the chat. Tahm Kench has shot up to a 51% win rate as a result of this duo. However, his win rates are still quite terrible with every marksman that isn't Senna, so he'll remain in our D tier. It's kind of insane. You have to understand that his win rate is being carried from the ground up to an above average place by Senna. Together, they held a 57% win rate. That is nuts. While Tahm Kench's next best duo partner, Misfortune, only yielded a 48% win rate. So you can tell who's getting carried here. Don't underestimate this duo as it allows Tahm Kench to accumulate a ton of gold. Senna doesn't farm early on and allows Tahm Kench to pick up the gold early, so you end up with a very farmed up support. In our S Plus tier for supports, we still have Leona, Nautilus, and Blitzcrank. I don't know when these guys are going to change and get dropped down, but here you are. The amount of crowd control and impactful pick-making potential they bring to the table is just insane, and it merits them as the most influential supports in the game, especially if you roam. My god, the amount of stuff you can do with these champions is just uncomparable. Following them in the S tier are Thresh, Senna, Nami, Pyke, Morgana, Lulu, and Bard. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the changes down below. Do you like the changes to teleport? Do you like the changes to funneling? What do you think about Teemo Jungle? Is that a weird thing for you guys? Let us know what you think about the champion placements as well. Once again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Christoph. I'll see you on the Rift.